Yo, what's up, guys, and welcome back to Marvelous Chats. My name is Finto.
And I'm Kyle Crunk, and we are talking Titans. This week we have episode 5, Lazarus. Finto, what'd you think?
This episode, the title alone, the fact that it's called Lazarus, I was so happy to see this. I'm like, okay, I think we're actually going to get the Jason Todd story like accurate to the comic books, because I was so afraid that when it was happening that they might just change everything. But I was quite happy that they actually called it Lazarus. So I was like, okay, grand, we're gonna get a kind of comic accurate version of this storytelling, which was great. Um, Makes me hopeful for the rest of the season. Yeah, basically, I this was probably my favorite episode of the season so far. I really liked episode 3 just because of the whole Hank kind of death. I thought that was a real. I didn't see it coming. So far for me, that's kind of been one of the most kind of standout points of the season, because it was just I just didn't see it coming at all.
Yeah.
Whereas this episode, so far for the first 4 episodes, I've been just sitting asking myself the entire time, like, how did he become Red Hood? How long has it been? Why is he telling Crane all these secrets? What's going on? It's just been so many questions in my head, and thankfully in this week's episode, we at least got a couple of answers. So
Yeah.
the episode starts out and it pans back to 3 months earlier, from the current time, and this is
Yeah.
basically when Jason returns from San Francisco. So he's just left the Titans after the events of season 2, comes back to Gotham, and he's just not the same Jason Todd. He gets into an
Yeah.
altercation, and fear takes over.
Yeah.
He can't control. He basically
It's,
he's just crumbling basically, and um,
yeah.
he
So,
basically.
yeah, I was going to kind of go off what you said. He
Yeah.
starts off the episode, and it pretty much starts off with him saying, hey, I'm going to. He's talking to Bruce, and Bruce is like, hey, you got to get this under control. He hasn't really taken any action yet, but Jason goes to hang out with one of his, I guess, childhood friends, and
Looks like a
like
love
you said, he
interest.
gets in this. Yeah, looks like a love interest for this season potentially, and he goes there. She's telling him, like, I hear that there's kids from this orphanage getting picked up, and there's this creepy guy been hanging out down the street. And he goes, oh really, and she doesn't know he's Robin. Obviously that's kind of a secret. She knows nothing about him, and he's like, oh, let's just go walk over that way. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's kind of, you get this idea, he's kind of showing off a little bit, being a little cocky.
Yeah.
And like you said, he gets in this altercation, which ends up with the gun being pulled in front of his face, which normally shouldn't be an issue for him. Robin would normally just break that dude's wrist, and it's a non-factor. But then he gets like pistol whipped, and like you said, fear takes over him, and he freezes completely, kind of embarrassing himself in front of this chick, and not only embarrassing himself, but she gets like freaked out, and then he snaps at her because he is embarrassed and says, get the hell out of here, with not so clean of language. He says,
Yeah.
"Get out of here! I don't want to see you right now. Get out of my face." And yeah,
Yeah, so what I liked about the episode was, obviously I had a lot of questions kind of leading into the episode, like how could he divulge all of the Bat family secrets to Crane, and like how do they get connected together and stuff like that. And gotta give a quick shout out to an IRL friend of mine, James, because we had a conversation about this before this episode happened, and he hit the nail on the head as to exactly what was happening. We were talking about the fear toxin at the start, and I was kind of giving my initial thoughts on it. I thought maybe he was going to fight the Joker, and it was kind of like an anti-Joker toxin or
yeah,
something like that. And my friend, to be fair to him, he hit it perfectly on the head. He said, I bet you it's like he's working with Crane, and it's like an anti-fear toxin, and he was perfectly right. And
damn.
yeah,
Kudos, James.
it's impressive. It's impressive. So shout out, James. Yeah. So like basically, yeah, and it makes perfect sense to the story. He's not the Robin that he knows he can be and should be, and he needs to just get rid of this fear, get rid of, like, just
I mean,
lose all of his emotion. So he
it
basically
makes
becomes.
sense.
Yeah, it does make sense.
We ended the last episode. Like realistically, yeah, I mean, they're showing someone suffering PTSD. He fell from that building. Like everything that he went through last season, and then not only that, to be kind of rejected by his entire support system, to go back to somebody who's just Bruce. And they're really showing this season that Bruce's relationship with Robbins is kind of just like use and abuse.
Yeah.
It's he's not the most fatherly. I think they tried to show in this episode that he was trying to be a little bit fatherly, but
Yeah, he
even the
calls
way
him
he goes
son.
about it,
He does.
yeah,
He calls him son, which I was a little surprised by because this version of Bruce is very dark,
yeah,
and obviously he's a killer as well. So I'm kind of like, oh, he actually does refer to Jason as a son. So I don't know if it's like if he realizes, oh shit, this is a little too late, and how I kind of
yeah.
treated Dick and Dick left and all this stuff. And I think it kind of comes across, and I don't know if this is just the way that the actor is portraying it, but it kind of comes across as if he doesn't really believe what he's saying. He's kind of lying a little bit, like he's called. Oh,
Yeah,
he's like,
kind of
oh,
saying what he wants him
son.
to hear.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. It doesn't
that's
seem.
the
It
vibe
doesn't.
I got.
Yeah. It doesn't seem very real. Like so. Um. Yeah. I
We
don't know.
kind of
Like.
jump forward there a little bit. I do want to mention, yeah, Bruce makes Jason. He pretty much benches Robin. Says, "Hey, you're not going to be Robin. You're dealing with this fear stuff. You're not going to be Robin until you go to this therapist,
Leslie
who's
Tompkins. Yeah.
Leslie Tompkins, who's my friend or whatever. We end up finding out later is a former colleague of Crane's and who was actually a victim of the Scarecrow
Yeah.
and his fear toxin. Um, so she he finds that connection between Crane and her. Jason does, and doesn't really get much out of her therapy. And that's kind of how that shows his initial connection to like why even think about Crane.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I kind of. I like. I kind of. It makes sense as to why Jason would be again so angry and want to just take this toxin because it's like, oh, Bruce is sending me to a therapist. This is so weak, and he would never do this with Dick. It's always a competition with him, like, oh, you didn't treat Dick like this, you didn't do this, So it's always kind of like little brothers kind of bickering, and yeah, it just makes a lot more sense seeing what we've seen now to why Jason would actually work with Crane. Like
He makes the deal pretty quick, though.
yeah,
The he goes to see Crane after he finds out that Leslie Tompkins was a colleague of Crane, and he's not really getting much out of the therapy she's trying to do. And on top of that, he goes to like 2 therapy sessions with her, I believe. And then Bruce says, "You're not going to be Robin anymore. Just point
yeah,
blank, period. Even though you did what I asked."
yeah,
Pretty much, Jason feels like I did what you wanted, and I'm still not going to be Robin. So like he's angry still. He still hasn't dealt with his fear.
yeah,
So he's a kind of at a last resort. He goes to see Crane, and Crane says, "All right, we'll reverse engineer the fear toxin and make anti-fear toxin. But what I want from you is what we talked about on our last episode, if you haven't seen yet, about Blackfire, when we found out that Crane pretty much knows everything about Robin, who Bruce is, Batman. He knows all this information. How did he get this information? Well, we're finding out this episode that was his price to pay for the anti-fear toxin
yeah.
for Jason.
He wanted all the information on Batman, which is smart. And obviously, Crane is very intelligent. He obviously knows this young lad comes up to visit him in prison. It's like this can only be a Robin. Like it only it's what makes the most sense. So that obviously didn't pass him up. He tries to lie and say that he's working for the GCPD, and he's just
Yeah,
like,
but
no,
I mean,
no, you're not. He's like, you're way too young
well,
for
on
this.
top of on top of working for the after he calls his bluff on the GCPD, which was a terrible lie to begin with, he shows him the fear toxin. So like he pretty much gives up his hand the entire time anyway, because he's like, well, that looks like something that only a very specific collector would have, and only a few people who would have access to that collector would have.
Yeah.
So like he already knows who Robin is. Like he gives
Yeah.
up his portion. The only information he really has to bargain with is Batman's secrets at
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah.
So
And just as well, one of my favorite parts of the episode was actually when Jason's going through the Batman trophy case, which is like just so.
you see
It's so
all
cool,
the
bro.
iconic ones. You see
Yeah.
the coin. You see the giant coin.
Yeah,
You
the
see
dinosaur.
the dinosaur.
They've got
Or the-
Two Face's coin. You've got Catwoman's goggles and whip. You've got the Joker cards. You've got Scarecrow's mask, and there's like a Ra's al Ghul sword as well, like or Ra's al Ghul, however you want to pronounce it. But yeah, it's just I thought that was so sweet. Like I love reading the
I
Batman
like their
comics, and
iteration of the mask as well.
yeah, the
Going off
mask
what
is
you
it's
said,
kind
yeah.
of like Cillian Murphy's version of the mask in the Nolan universe film, which I thought
Yeah.
was the best one we've seen. So I thought that was
Well, I
really
think I like it was a mixture of both because the one we saw in the movies was just like a burlap sack and it was the toxin that made it look like everything else.
Yeah.
This one was kind of like in between that. It was a burlap sack that kind of had a little bit of creepy on. So
Yeah.
the toxin would just make it that much more insane. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Loved the trophy case. Loved the kind of the nod to Catwoman and stuff like that. Like Catwoman's so important to the Batman story as well. Like, and with him being like older and nearly retired, I'm curious will we actually get to see kind of maybe settled down Selena Kyle, like, which would be great. I'd love to see that. That'd be big for me now. So yeah, I just like again one of the questions I kind of leave the episode thinking is
Well, we're skipping forward before we're leaving the episode. We really haven't even talked about the title mention of the episode, which is the Lazarus Pit.
I was just about to say
Yeah, I was gonna say he gets Jason. We get a call back to the very first episode where and I think the second episode where Jason has been working with all this chemistry set and what was he doing? Well, now we're finding out that he was getting the actual information to make the drugs himself. He buys this drug house, makes the anti-fear toxin. It ties back into the first episode. It continues through the first episode with this new hindsight and perspective, and then we see Jason get killed again with
yeah,
what I have to say is some of the most gnarly body makeup I've like. You see Jason's dead
yeah,
body,
yeah.
face caved in.
It's
It's
pretty violent, dude.
gnarly,
Yeah,
dude. Like
this
he's dead,
show is
dead.
not
Like
for children.
no, this
Yeah,
is very, very graphic. His face is caved in, very realistic seeming.
yeah, it was great.
Um,
Loved it.
and then it shows us the Lazarus Pit, which I'll let you go from here because I know you have a
Yeah,
lot to say
so
about the
that's
pit.
what I was about to just talk about the pit. So that was the kind of main question that I had, obviously, for the entire series so far. It was like, is he going to get revived in the pit? How does he get to a pit? I'm like, what's going on? Like the pits are kind of in comics and so on. Like they're kind of in Nanda Parbat and all these places. They're all like randomly placed all over the world. I think there's
Is
actually
there one under Gotham, like in the
no.
show?
Well, this is it. Like there in the comics, no, there's not. So, or
Okay.
if there is, it's in a series that I haven't read. But basically, in the comic books, they're kind of like randomly placed in these like exotic places all over the earth. And Ra's al Ghul's like 1,000 years old, and he's had time to kind of scour the earth and find them all. They're all like under his control and stuff. Funny fact though, I think in the comics it's referenced in one of the comics that I read a long time ago that I think there's one in Scotland or like Edinburgh, so there's one close to where I live, which I thought was hilarious.
It does look for it on a few weekends.
I'm on the
Let's
way.
just,
I've been in Edinburgh. I looked for it. I couldn't find it. But yeah, but I just thought. So yeah, like the question that I had a lot of the for the entire kind of watching of the series was how is he getting to a pit? Because again, he hasn't disappeared for months, which would make sense if he went to somewhere like Nanda Parbat and then got put in a pit, went through a whole kind of like rebirth phase, and then came back. This is just kind of like he died and he's straight back. He's Red Hood already. So this is why I'm like, where's the pit? And you kind of we see in the episode he gets dipped into a pit, and it looks like it's just been it was
it
under
looks like,
it was
but
under
it's
the
still
prison
like
or something.
yeah. Well, they said under Gotham, and
Yeah,
their only reference is Ra's al Ghul left a little present under Gotham. And
yeah.
to go back to what you were saying, they still make it seem like it's next day from his death,
Yeah.
almost. Like
Yeah. So
it,
it's like how does
it
Crane know where the pit is? It looks like they like are in like a morgue or something and they've just literally dug a hole in the ground and bang the pit is there. He just gets thrown into it and then he emerges from it. I thought the
yeah.
actual scene of him emerging from it was pretty cool. It was kind of like he gets like kind of consumed by some like black tar or something and he kind of emerges from it. I thought that was
Like a
cool. Like
phoenix, yeah.
the effects of it were cool looking, but I just don't understand. Again, we need more answers, you know, and so I just yeah, I don't know. I can't really say much more on it until we see more, you know. So yeah,
Yeah.
how did you rate the episode as in its entirety?
I'd have to say 8 out. For me, not being as much of like a huge Red Hood fan in the past, so I don't have that really all that stuff to be like, well, they're not really letting me down by not doing it as common accurate. So I
Yeah,
kind of enjoyed the visuals of the Lazarus Pit, its location being under Gotham, really me not knowing if it's not supposed to be there, So going into it not knowing all this stuff, 8 out of 10. Really enjoyed it. It was the I think this could have been a really good second or third episode,
mm,
honestly.
yeah,
Um, I think maybe its placement's a little bit weird. We'll have to see where the rest of the show goes. But yeah, just everything we got in it really gets us more invested in Jason as the Red Hood, makes us understand kind of why and who and what. Gives us all not all the answers, but a lot of the answers we wanted.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. For me, it would be kind of like a high 8. It was definitely my favorite episode of the season. I'm a big Red Hood fan, big Jason Todd fan, so it was nice to kind of see them, reference history. And yes, they're obviously changing some things. So again, I need to just see how the season plays out before I kind of give my final thoughts on it. But right now, I have more questions than answers that we've gotten. But yeah, I'm happy to continue watching. So yeah, guys, if you like the content, please like the video, leave a comment below, let us know what you think of the season, and if you don't already, please hit the subscribe button, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Yeah. See you guys.